I think the thing that helped me the most was I learnt the language of my mind and my body. We learn a lot of French, Spanish, German, etc. But really the most important language is, do you understand your thoughts and can you hear them? And can you actually understand what your body is saying and the emotions you are feeling? Because once you understand that language, you are essentially the expert of your mind and body.
Maya Raichoora, absolutely delighted to have you on the show, the Purpose-Led Leadership Podcast. We've been speaking on Instagram and a little bit on LinkedIn. I've followed your story with great interest. So for those that don't know you, tell us a bit about you. Tell us what you do now, and then go into your journey from school.
Gosh, how long do we have? Okay, so at the moment, I am the founder and CEO of Remap Mental Fitness. So my personal and professional mission is to basically build the Nike of mental fitness and make this idea of training the brain as common as training the body. I'm also a one-to-one coach for elite athletes, CEOs, and very high-performing visionaries, basically. I want to help people go from good to amazing, like the top 1%.
Yeah.
So obviously, I didn't just I wasn't born and this just happened. School, let's go to school. So I was a very high-achieving individual. I did very well at school. I'm South Asian. That was kind of expected. But I also was very into sport. So I played badminton professionally for county, country. And that was my thing. I kind of thought that I would take that very far. And I was training, 5-6 times a week. And it was my world, absolutely my world. But I basically, maybe at the age of about 15, started basically getting some symptoms in my stomach. So it started to hurt a bit. And then when I went to the loo, it was really painful. And actually I started seeing blood quite often. And obviously when you're 15, you're let's go to the doctor. So I did that. And, you go through the whole process of doing the tests and going on some medication, and it was fine. Life was pretty okay. And I continued with my life. I kept training in badminton. I was still, doing my GCSEs, etc. I kind of ignored it, if I'm honest. It didn't really affect me. And as time went on, things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so eventually it was at a point where I was in the loo maybe 30, 40 times a day, and it's just pure blood and pain, and it's quite animalistic, really. You can't really scream or cry or feel it because you're just having to survive it in that moment.
Because I've heard of something called endometriosis or something like that. It sounds similar to that, or am I wrong?
So that is very common in women, right. And yes, that's painful. So what I was eventually diagnosed with is ulcerative colitis,
wow.
Which is, it's an inflammatory bowel disease. So a lot of people have heard of Crohn's, which is kind of the sister or brother of it. But colitis basically affects your large intestine. So it's everything from how you absorb food, water, to essentially going to the loo. And it's funny because, these are things we take for granted.
Yeah.
You don't think about how does your body actually help you go to the toilet. And I get it, it's a bit weird to talk about, but actually when it's really impacted, you realize how scary it is when that part of you doesn't really work.
It's also obviously debilitating.
Oh, I don't even think there's a word to describe the impact it had physically, but mentally as well. Because as a woman who is, a teenager, you suddenly are wearing adult nappies every day. You are not feeling very good in yourself. People don't also know about it. I didn't tell anyone about it because I think it was really embarrassing. Telling your friends that, this is happening.
So it's going to the loo every 5 minutes or 10 minutes effectively, right?
Yeah. And I think, to be fair as well, it's I didn't know what was happening. I was really scared. I was really scared because there was no solution. I was just on medication after medication, infusion after infusion. And like at 17, 18, I was on about 60 tablets every day.
Right, okay.
And, is that a way to live? I just, no.
So we can go deeper in that. I mean, I don't know how long you had it, but maybe you can answer that question. But how did it affect you mentally? Because physically, we can guess, we can see, and I'm sure it affected you physically and the pain and everything else and stopped you doing various things. But mentally, talk about that.
So mentally, I think it was two major ways. The first being shame. Because I didn't tell anyone, so I've had it for about 10 years now. But the first...
You still got it now?
Well, it doesn't go away,
right.
But I am not affected by it, is what I'll say. So I'm not on any medication, etc., but which is pretty unheard of. But it's a chronic illness. But shame was a big one because I didn't tell anyone. And I think when we feel like we can't actually say what's going on in our life and be honest about it, it really weighs on you. Like, it really weighs on you to the point that, like, I had to lie about a lot of things, or I was basically living a secret life, but not because I wanted to, because I just felt so embarrassed and ashamed of what was happening. So mentally, that can really weigh on you because I lost friends. I lost my social skills. And the other thing mentally was like, there's that saying where it's like, you get knocked down 7 times and you just get back up 8. I was actually living that because, being in hospital 6 or 7 times, and the way the cycle happens is like you get a flare up and that can last for maybe like, 4 weeks to 4 months, depending on what you do.
Yeah.
Then I'd go into hospital. Then I'd have maybe a month where life was okay again, and it would happen again.
Wow.
And just imagine that cycle where you think you're okay, and then again, life hits you. Yeah. And you're going through the same pain again. You are so scared of it as well.
You can't move forward, can you? You probably lost your confidence, but you can't sort of dream and make plans and do that kind of stuff, I guess. I don't know.
No, not at all. Like, I could barely, it's... So today, for example, when I was coming here on the train, I always do this now. I remember the time where I could not even step on a train or in a car without basically shitting myself. Like, just imagine that. Like, it's a human right that we, obviously when you're a baby, it's that similar thing. You don't have control over it. But as an adult, when you don't have control over that.
All right. So without being too graphic, I just thought it was kind of waterworks, but you're saying it's the whole bowel system.
It is like, no, it's nothing to do with, that's why some people, but I would pretend it was. I'd be like, oh yeah, it's just like it's like a bladder or whatever, but it's not. It's actually,
that's really challenging.
Yeah.
God.
And that's why it's not like a pleasant thing to be speaking about because it's so taboo. No one talks about that.
Right.
And so, so when I'm like on a train and having an accident, it's like, you feel like So
literally, you'd have to, you literally would have to wear adult nappies and you would have to kind of like clean yourself afterwards kind of on a regular. That is, I can imagine.
But I couldn't tell anyone. I had to just like deal with it myself. And it was so dehumanizing because the interesting thing is I'd say like 99.9% of people will never have to go through something like that, ever.
You say you lost friends. What happened? Did they just like abandon you or just ignore you or just disown you?
I guess they didn't understand. Like, think about how immature we are at the age of about 15, 16. Like, how can anyone understand? And I think we were just in different places. Like, whilst my friends are thinking about the next boy they want to ask out or the next party they're going to, I'm there like, will I get through tomorrow? Will I be able to ever go to school again? Will I ever not be in pain?
So the age of 15 through to like, you're sort of late to mid 20s now, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm 26.
26, right. Wish I was 26.
You look it.
Thank you. How did it affect your relationships then and your confidence in that department?
I mean, simply put, I didn't have a relationship. I lost my sense of femininity and being a woman because it made me feel very unsexy, basically. And that is a relationship I've had to build in the last few years. But no, I was very scared of boys. I was very scared of the idea of like anyone finding out or judging me. And they have previously, right? If like people have found out, it's like, oh, ew kind of thing.
Because I bet you get the thing where, is that all she ever bloody talks about kind of stuff? Because I've had some different types of issues and trauma and stuff like that, and I do constantly tell people what happened because it's part of my story and it's me, and kind of like I've got to a point now where I don't care what people think. I own it, and I think sometimes people get the opinion of, oh, you know, why can't you? It's not as easy if you just move on and not talk about it, is it? You've got to talk about it. What do you think?
Yes and no. I think I got into the trap of always speaking about it to the point that I was then reliving it, and I was actually just being a bit of a victim, right? It's like, so when someone says, how are you? You're just like, so it's just been awful, X, Y, Z, right? And that doesn't help anyone because you're just telling your brain and body again and again that you're really unwell, you're never going to get better, etc. Whereas now when I tell my story, and if I'm not in the right mindset, I won't say it because I need to be strong enough to be like, I know that I'm out the other side and that I am sharing it to help someone else. But I have had to kind of train myself to say my story so that it's not me reliving it.
No, it's part of you, but it doesn't
define me.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely right.
It's made me who I am today. But it doesn't define me. And so I was listening to a podcast, I think like, I don't know when, a few days ago. And the guest was saying that him getting diagnosed with an illness was the best thing that's ever happened to him. And he's so grateful for it. And I thought to myself, is that true for me? And I can honestly say, no. I am not going to sit here and be like, I am so glad I went through all of that pain and suffering for like 5-6 years. I'm never going to say that like, yeah, it's the best thing that's happened to me. I understand why people say that because obviously I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. But truthfully speaking, I would never go through that again.
Sure, I fully understand that. And I say stuff like that as well. But I also think that adversity that you've had has made you stronger, resilient, and hopefully enabled you to build the business you've built now. I mean, you've got 200,000 followers. Is that right?
Yeah. And that's where I am grateful for who I am from it. But it does not mean that I would go through it again.
So what advice would you give people in a similar situation?
Well, don't take other people's advice, to be fair. No, I think the thing that helped me the most was I learnt the language of my mind and my body. We learn a lot of like, you know, French, Spanish, German, etc. But really the most important language is, do you understand your thoughts and can you hear them? And can you actually understand what your body is saying and the emotions you are feeling? Because once you understand that language, you are essentially the expert of your mind and body. You are. And I'm going to be a bit controversial here. Your health, mentally, physically, emotionally, is totally your responsibility and your fault. And when I first heard that, I hated it because I was like, oh, well, I haven't created this illness. But genuinely, once I realized that, Maya, you created this illness, which means that you can also overcome it, it helped me.
I really resonate with that. One of my favorite sayings is, 2 men looked through the prison bars, one man saw mud, the other saw stars.
Oh, wow.
And what I mean by that is that I do think you get a choice. I think your adversity, my adversity, we can compare, but we shouldn't. There's always someone that's got slightly worse or whatever. It's all objective, isn't it? But ultimately, I do think we do get a choice about how we, you know, it's not what happens to us, it's how we deal with it. I know it's a very common statement, but I do think that we are in charge in that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really brave thing to admit, because the amount of people I hear saying, oh, but my mental health is bad because of my boss or because of my work or because of my parents. Fine, I agree, that plays a role. But you can control who you're around, what you're doing, and how you live your life. So, and I'm very, very clear with that we cannot blame it on other people. It is us. We have to take control of it.
But even if it is their fault, it doesn't actually matter, because by you saying it's their fault, it's not actually going to change anything.
Exactly. Blame just doesn't help anyone. You know, you're the one drinking the poison.
Yeah. So talking about your stuff on Instagram, and it's fascinating. It's very up my street. You talk about emotions and feelings and all this kind of stuff. But I agree with you. I think you've mentioned things like thoughts aren't necessarily real. And people say, what do you mean thoughts aren't real? In my experience is that the majority of our thoughts that come into our mind, they're from outside people or outside things, not actually our thoughts. Talk to us about all that kind of world.
Yeah, so generally, like, obviously, when we're growing up, you're gonna your brain is basically, it's like a sponge. It will take in what your parents have said, what your teachers have said, what you've heard online. And obviously now we're on social media, there's so much more coming in, right? So that's kind of like our brain will get wired based on what's coming in from it, like around us, etc. Now, I wouldn't say that our thoughts aren't real. Every thought is valid, but we have to question them. They're not all going to serve us. They're all not going to, be productive. So I think that's why if we can have the self-awareness to be like, okay, I'm having this thought, which might be, I don't know, I'm not a very good public speaker. Is it true? Maybe it is. Fine. What do we need to do to change that if you want to? But also, is it true? Like, I'm not good enough, or she's prettier than me. Like, those are the thoughts that really lower our potential.
Yeah.
And I think it's that thing of thoughts are essentially the language of your brain. And, there are many ways to navigate them. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to meditate and make all my thoughts go away. Honestly, that's impossible. That is impossible. You cannot just get rid of all your thoughts. The key is being able to see them without judging them. That's what's key. And the really fun part of all of this is you can rewire your thoughts. They don't have to stay.
Yeah. I think it's almost like, to an extent, you can do all the work in the world and it really helps. I think negative thoughts or bad days or shit is always going to happen. It's always going to come. And I think you've almost got to accept that there's times when, sometimes you're flying, you're doing really well, and then some shit happens and you get this negative thought completely out of the blue and you're like, where the fuck has that come from? Yeah. I think sometimes you just got to accept it and acknowledge it and go, okay, you're there now. And almost what I found, when you start to embrace that kind of thing, rather than I've got to go for a run, I've got to go for a beer, I've got to do something, I've got to get rid of that thought, actually it just comes back worse anyway.
So true. And I think being happy all the time is just so overrated. It's so overrated because, when someone's like, oh no, just positive vibes only, or, just think of the next thing. But it's like, actually, negative thoughts or feelings, it's part of being human. Can you sit with it and feel it so that it passes through you? Because you're right. Most of us are, we wait till the weekend to just drown all our thoughts in alcohol, or we're working away till like 2 a.m. or, whatever we're doing. And actually, it's very rare that I can see that people are like, no, I'm going to be brave and sit with the discomfort and the, sadder or harder thoughts and feelings and actually just feel it. Let it move through.
Totally. I'm just picking up on something you just said there, actually, when you said don't take other people's advice. And I quite like that because what I've learned is that I do listen to some people and I admire people like, off the top of my head, Jay Shetty, Gary Vaynerchuk. There's loads of people that I follow and get wisdom from. But ultimately, I do think that until you start actually taking control and actually making your own decisions and doing your own thing, then you're always going to be subservient to other people anyway.
Yeah, and have you heard of the book, The Advice Trap? It's very good. So it talks about both parties and this idea that, when someone comes to you and they're like, oh, okay, this is happening in my life. Generally, as humans, we are very quick to be like, oh, you should do this, or I did this, maybe trying this, right? We automatically give advice. And the book says that actually just create a bit of a pause moment and do this instead. And I now do this with my clients, also just like my friends. I ask them, what do you need from me? Do you need my opinion or my advice?
Right, okay.
Do you want me to just listen and not say anything?
Yeah,
or
that's really good.
Do you need a hug and, just us spend a bit of time together? And what it does is it makes them actually think, oh, okay, actually, what do I need? Because often when you give advice, they're not even taking it in because they're in the moment. And so even at work or wherever you are, it's such a great way to just be like, what do you need from me?
Yeah, totally. What's your thoughts on kind of like, because you're young and you're rising up, you're doing really well. You've done some TED Talks, which is phenomenal, which I want to do as well. And in my experience, and I've built multi-million-pound businesses, I've had some ups and some downs, and I think that some people have helped me along the way. At the moment, I'm into kind of, I call it shedding, where I'm removing some people in my life, removing some energies, some situations and some environments. And some of these people are quite big people, as in they're influential, and kind of like, up until recently, I wouldn't be able to do that. But like, I'm at a stage now where I'm kind of, sometimes I'm falling out with people. I almost think it's because I'm doing quite well. And what I'm trying to say here quite badly is I think if you want to get where you want to get to, you have to be so ruthless with anyone that's given you bad vibes and energy. What's your view on that kind of stuff? So I think sometimes we can get held back because of people being not necessarily jealous, but kind of like just not being the right trajectory for us.
Yeah, I think to be fair, this is a very relevant topic for me at the moment, because I think we always do focus on what more do we need in our life. But similar to this idea of shedding, like I do life and relationship audits very regularly. Just like every quarter, I'll be like, okay, look at who's around you. And I like this word of, are they still serving you? So not so much are they good or bad for me, but it's like, does it still serve me? And what it does is it kind of like takes my ego out of it. And I'm actually like, okay, what do they bring to my life? And is it helping me grow or learn or giving me joy? And so I really agree with you where sometimes when you have to take out people, it can be so difficult.
Yeah.
Like whether that's your closest friends, even family
You just don't
sometimes.
want to let it go, right?
Yeah. But I think, just because you have a past with someone does not necessarily mean they need to be in your future. And it's really hard when they are people who have been there for a while.
So because I've struggled with it, but I'm getting really better now. And I have to say that the feeling of them not being my life, when you get past that and not caring and surrendering, it's that amazing feeling of gone, actually, I've managed to do that. Whereas before, up until recently, I'll be like, I kind of half did it and then allow them back in. It's kind of like, it takes time, I guess. But what advice would you give for people trying to kind of remove people that they're in love with them in some way, or they know that they're bad for them, but they also make them feel quite good? It's almost a self-worth thing, isn't it?
I think there's two things to this. One, you've got to just take action so that you can see. Just try it. Just really, really try. And the second thing is, as much as we think that we are, we really care for them and that we love them and they do bring us something in our life, ask yourself that, are you losing yourself in the process? Because often, even though they still added some stuff to me, they're also taking away the parts of me that I loved, and I needed a bit of space for me to understand who that was again, because we're always changing, right? And often people will stop us from changing how we need to. So I think even if it's just like a bit of space, fine. So like collect your thoughts and be like, right, do I even miss this person? Often I do this and I'm like, I don't even miss them. And that to me shows that
says a lot, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Maybe, they don't need to be there.
You come across very articulately, very confidently, very clear. You've got a good charisma, good personality.
It's all fake.
So lots of compliments here.
Thank you.
Surely it's not fake, surely not. So I want to talk to you about relationships. I want to talk to you about the relationship you have with yourself and how that's changed.
Okay.
And also the relationships you have with family, with, how important do you think that is to you?
Yeah. So the relationship with myself, like this is changing all the time. I guess there's many different ways to look at this, but I'll talk about the couple of things that recently have been really, really helpful for me. So I always treat myself like my best friend, especially when it comes to, negative thoughts, or if I'm not feeling great. It's funny, when I used to not feel great, I'd be like, oh, Maya, like, what the hell? Like, just get over it or just move on, or what's wrong with you? But if my friend came up to me and was like, Maya, I'm feeling a bit anxious, would I ever say that to them? No.
Sure.
So in those moments, I'm just like to myself, Maya, be your best friend. And what it's been doing is it's just created this relationship where I am kind to myself, but I'm also like, tough love as well, but I'm fair and I like that. And so being able to develop that is brilliant.
Having that, just to jump in on that, I think it's so good to have that self-love piece, but I think it's good. Sometimes I give myself a telling off, but not in a stupidly critical way, but in a way that's actually, if I had a coach, I want that coach to say that to me kind of way. And it's a real art, that, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm kind of my own therapist, if that makes sense. The other thing I do is I solo date a lot.
No, I'm a big fan of that.
Right? Like, sit in the pub on your own or in a restaurant or whatever it is. Because I think we've got to treat ourselves like other people. Like, what do I like doing? Or what do I not like? Or how am I feeling? Things you would ask others, get to know yourself in that way. The other thing is, I don't know, when it comes to like my body as well, it's really interesting. I have learned to just accept my body in every way. Why? Because I think when you do go through something with your health, you realize that ultimately that is the only wealth there is. And if my body is working, I have enough in life. I don't need anything else. If I can wake up and not be in pain and be able to, eat something and move my body in some way.
Right. So that gratitude piece, so you're not overly critical of, oh God, I've put on weight, and all. You don't allow that. Obviously, you care about your body and your shape and how you look, but you're not going to sort of be this perfectionist kind of like.
No, I think focusing on like progress rather than perfection, because really, does it exist? Like, it was something that I learned when I was at school, which I really liked. So my background, my parents were born and raised in Kenya. So I spent a lot of time in Africa. Yeah. And when I was in the UK, perfect and beautiful was blonde, blue eyes, quite skinny. That was like, okay. In Africa, so in Kenya, beautiful and actually status is women who are like quite overweight, actually. They're quite big. They're quite loud, things like that. And really, I had these two ideas of beauty and perfection that were completely opposite. And it's a bit like, I love philosophy and like how Plato says, we understand what the idea of beauty is, but it's just an ideal. Like that has projections in different places. And I think culturally, I'm glad that I grew up with that to be like,
That's very similar to wealth. I mean, people see wealth as money and status and cars and houses. And I see wealth as how you treat people, your purpose, what you're giving to the world and impact, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, money plays a part in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Robin Sharma. He has these like 8 forms of wealth, and that's similar. What you said, it is money, but it's also like self-mastery. He has one which I love, which is adventure. I think that's so
I love
good.
that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
like just have a bit more fun in life. When you get older, what do you do for fun?
Yeah,
everyone's like, I don't know.
I see. So it should be one of the values. I think having fun should be a value. We'll talk about values in a minute, but we're kind of like the journey. Kind of like you had it for 10 years, between 15 and 25. It sounds like it calmed down a little bit the last 2 or 3 years. But at what point did you start accepting it, talking about it, owning it, and kind of like moving through it, do you think?
To kind of like fill in a bit of the story. So when I was, it was like August 2017 or 18, I was in hospital and I basically couldn't go to uni. So I was going to Bristol and I really wanted to study innovation. It was like my dream. It sounds lame, but it was. And yeah, I was told I couldn't go. I was just too unwell. And so I spent a lot of that year just unwell and all of that. But I would constantly practice like visualization and seeing where I wanted to go, etc. And then I did end up going to uni. And actually I had the best like 3.5 years of my life. Like I, was feeling way better. I was still on a lot of medication, but I was feeling way better. I was able to be a bit normal again, be in society, like learn all of that.
Yeah.
And it was so nice. I finally felt free of the disease. Like I was like, Maya, this is amazing. You've been training your mind. You have like overcome something that should have destroyed you, like should have. And then it happened again. Yeah, I had my 9th flare. And this one, I didn't even react. I was just like, that is it now. I do not want to live my life like this anymore. I don't want the surgery. I don't want to be in this pain. So truly, I was so at peace with just letting go. I did not want to even, it was actually the happiest decision for me to be like, I'm finally okay with just like, I don't want to keep trying. I don't want to keep fighting or trying.
Yeah.
I am so happy to give up now. I didn't have the energy in me.
Wow.
And this was in my master's year. And I was doing my master's at the same time. And I was like, oh my God.
That was like a spiritual moment in a way, no?
Yeah, in a way that it was like, it's, everyone's always like, oh, what kept you fighting? But actually, I didn't want to. I didn't fight anymore.
Properly surrendering.
Yeah, I just stopped.
Wow.
I was like, I couldn't do it.
How did that, obviously that changed your attitude and your relationship with the disease, which is a disease. Is it or condition?
Disease, yeah.
Okay. It sounds like that moment also affected you positively in terms of how you looked at life in general, would you say, or not?
Not just yet, because at that point I felt like the disease had won and I was just not strong enough to do it. Like when I say I surrendered, I wasn't surrendering for the right reason at that point. I was surrendering because I actually couldn't do it. But that year I made a massive risk, and I'm not saying anyone should do this, but I did come off everything and I just used the power of my mind and emotions and regulation and having very hard conversations. And I'd say the biggest one was acceptance. And all I did, which took so much courage, was I put up my phone, I pressed record, and then I like posted this, I don't know, like, was like a 9-minute video on Instagram. And at this point, I literally had like, I don't know, 500, 600 followers. It wasn't like a big thing. And I just said what I'd been going through. I was like, for the last 8 years, this has actually been my life. None of you know this because I've kept it a secret. And it just felt like this like black shadow came off me a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
I finally like said it. Even my family didn't know.
Wow.
Like, it's just, now I think about it, like, you know, the whole time you're just denying the existence of a disease. Yeah. And it comes back at you, right? Because if you don't own it, it will fight even harder. And there's a whole nother basically like thing where our body will express what our mind suppresses. And for years, I was just suppressing so many emotions, so many traumas, so many experiences.
I love that. Your body will suppress what your mind expresses.
Yes.
Or the other way around.
No, so you will create disease, trauma, all of that if you don't address your emotions and what's actually going on in your mind.
Eventually, it's like a second class post. It will come eventually.
Yeah.
You can run, but you can't hide.
No, exactly. And you ask, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, there's a rise in chronic illness. Yeah, but why? Actually look at the world we live in where none of us are taking the time to, you know, actually know who we are, feel our emotions, do all of that. That's a huge, huge source of why we're getting more chronically ill.
Oh, totally. I think, I don't know what the number is, but a very high percentage, I'd go as far as to say above 80 or 90% of people in this world, they're going to work, they're getting up, they're doing their thing, but they don't even know why they're fucking doing it. There's no purpose to their lives. I've been guilty of this in the past, not now, I'd say. And they're in denial or they're not willing, able, capable, won't even know how to actually just be open, take the mask off and just be yourself. And it's not easy, but it's so worth it.
It is, but I do think, being yourself is bloody scary. And have you ever heard of this? I love it. It's this Japanese, I feel like the Japanese just know their stuff. There's a Japanese idea that we have 3 faces. So one is the face we show to the public, which tends to be the most masked, like it's, you know, where we go to work and things like that. Then you've got the face which you show to like your inner circle, like your friends, right? Or your family, the ones who know you a little bit more, they understand you a bit. Then your third face is the one that only you can see. Only you. No one else actually has ever seen it. It's just you. And I think I really like this idea because even when you are yourself with other people, the only person who really knows who you are is you. But you've got to work at it. You've actually got to spend time finding out who that is. So taking off those other masks and being like, when I'm fully alone, do I like myself and who am I? Like without your job, without your name, without everything, who are you? And it's a fascinating journey to go on.
Talk to us about, it's an archetypal question, but I want to go quite deep. When was that time where you just felt like in bits, on the floor, your darkest moment, you kind of like just...
I've definitely had a lot of them, to be fair. I think the one that probably really got me was this time in hospital. And it was just this doctor being like, I am so, so sorry. You just will be sick the rest of your life. And it was like, and I remember it was this ward where it was they had no windows, and this nurse, she was like, this nurse came in and she just took my bloods, and it was just like, I was just withered. I didn't even like recognize her. I didn't even want to. And, you know, yes, I feel like I've hit rock bottom so many times now to the point where they've always put me in bits. And I think that's why that whole like falling down 7 times, getting up 8 is a fine saying. But like when you are doing it year on year, it can really break you.
Sometimes you just think, where's it all going to end?
Well, exactly. And that was the problem. Because I didn't have any goal or hope for my future, that is a very scary thing. When you don't have any hope, like 0%, it's so scary. Like it's so, so scary. And I think the fear of just not knowing and if it was going to happen again and people telling me it was going to happen again, it can really, it changed me as a human, to say the least. I became very cold and I had no love, and I hated the world. I hated the world.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How did you change that perspective then? Because it's hard not to be negative, I think.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I had every right to be. I had every right to be depressed and upset. How did I change the perspective? Hard damn work. And I actually don't think it was a quick process. For me, it was a bit like, like in a car where you have like reverse neutral drive. It was a bit like that. I was in reverse for a long time, and slowly I worked my way to neutral. So it wasn't about like, Maya, life is amazing. No, it was like, okay, how can you minimize your negativity just by 1%, and keep going. Then it got to a point of neutrality, and I was like, okay, I can breathe. That I can be grateful for that. I can see a tree. I can see a sunset. Start being grateful for those things. You build up that, and then obviously visualization was a huge piece of like me being able to rewire the way I saw the world and the way I saw myself and what I could achieve and become. And that was a massive part of then me realizing, Maya, this does not have to be the way it stays.
Absolutely. I think that's right. It's unwiring, then rewiring. And you talked about that, but can you give us a bit more information? Because I've used the power of visualization and kind of like, I've got it down to a T now, I think. But I think people laugh at meditation and visualization and this kind of stuff. But until you can visualize it, I don't think you can realize it.
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. And to be fair, if you look at the best athletes in the world, this is exactly what they do to achieve their goals. And yeah, people do laugh at it, and that's great. Like, I don't mind if you do. People used to laugh at the fact that humans used to run. Like, we're just a bit late on timing, and that's fine. But I think ultimately, it's the idea that if your brain, like we were talking about just before, your brain is conditioned with all those thoughts and ideas from media, parents, etc. You can live your life being stuck and staying with that basically governing how you live your life. Or you take control of it and you rewire that. So by rewire, I mean that you can take the pathways in your brain and reshape them. You can get rid of old pathways and create new ones.
Yeah, I've done stuff like NLP and RTT, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, and they're all like different ways to kind of like tap into the brain. But I think the reason I like visualization is because it's literally just your brain. All you need is what's between your ears, 7 to 10 minutes every single day, and you're done. Like, it's just like how you train your body, and it's fun. You're using your imagination. You are giving yourself the power to like shape your future. And obviously I used it for that, but I also used it for my pain, for, my gut, for my cells, for all of that. So
how did you come to this? Was it just the disease that got you into this, what you're doing now? So you obviously want to finish off the journey, but I want to know how you're now doing what you're doing. I mean, you see CEOs and athletes become the top 1%. How did you do that? And the mental fitness piece, I love that.
Yeah, so it was through the disease that I started practicing it. But then I actually went on to uni and studied innovation for about 4 years. So that's my background. My background's actually geography with innovation. So, and then in my last year, I had the opportunity to start a business. And so I did. And I realized that like everyone knew about meditation, but no one knew what visualization was. And I was doing it every day and it was helping me. And so I knew athletes did it. And so I started that and I was like, okay, my mission is now going to be to spread this to more people. And specifically mental fitness, because I don't really talk about mental health anymore. I'm just bored of just talking about it. Like, do something, actually train it. And
sure,
be proactive. And I think this idea of fitness is way more empowering. So when I work with, these CEOs and athletes, that's because I have a skill that is very unique at my age and for the amount of time I've done it. You've got maybe Joe Dispenza and some very great athletic coaches who also do it, but they're not very known or public and people can't really, learn from them. Whereas I love teaching this so others can also experience the same sort of benefits. So I love the one-to-one coaching. And yes, obviously being in these circles of very cool people is amazing. And also I learn a lot.
Yeah.
And then the other side of this is great, but how can we get more of the world doing it? And that's where I love the events. I love the, working with your Nikes, your Gymsharks. It's super fun.
So is it a question on the one-to-ones? Is it a question of imagine the best version of your future self, Chris? What do you look like? What do you feel like? What are you dressing like? Is it that kind of technique, or is it?
Can be. I teach 5 types of visualization. So you've got outcome, which is similar to what you said. So you're building motivation, power, etc. Process, which is brilliant for like productivity, performance, especially, and like overcoming challenges. You've then got creative visualization. So this is brilliant for managing emotions. Like a lot of footballers, when they're, let's say, about to go on pitch, you get nervous, etc. How can you work with that? LeBron James is such a good example of, you could literally see him with his eyes closed doing it, during his games. Like, it's powerful. Then you've got 2 others, negative visualization. I don't teach this to everyone, but it's this idea that if you see the worst that can happen, it can often motivate someone. So Michael Phelps is a good example of, he would see all the things that would go wrong, but it would prepare him. And then the last one is explorative or receptive. So this is brilliant for CEOs and, executives who are thinking of starting their own thing, or they're brainstorming new ideas, etc. It's a great way to create your mind like a whiteboard. And someone like Einstein or Nikola Tesla are good examples of that.
So do you put your clients into some sort of meditative trance then, or not?
I guess you could call it that. Like, ultimately, they are... Yeah, like, I'm guiding them through something. And ideally, you want your eyes closed and not having too many senses around you. And then I use like very awesome music that I DJ. And yeah, that's kind of the process.
Yeah. So this is the Purpose-Led Leadership podcast. And I believe that when you find a purpose, or you're delivering your gifts, things happen. So would you say that what you're doing is, you said you've got a gift, which I love that statement. Do you think this is your calling and your purpose to do this, or?
So I think it's definitely my zone of genius.
Okay.
And I love it. And I see a big difference between my purpose and my passions. Like, my passions I love doing, but my purpose is what I get out of bed for. But the other thing I will say is, I don't like this narrative that, like, we're on this earth to find our purpose. Like, I don't believe that. I think we all have multiple purposes, and it's attained on a daily basis.
I think they evolve and change regularly as well, right?
Exactly. And like, you have to live it out and attain it every single day, even in the smallest of actions or thoughts or whatever. So I do think this is very aligned to, my purpose, one of my purposes. And who knows if it will stay like that. Okay. I don't know.
Well, we're excited to find out, definitely. Talk to us about family then. How's that played out for you? It seems like your family were good for you in terms of looking after you and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I only until recently realised the amount of stress and impact it has on others around you when you are even though you are going through the worst bit.
Yeah, of course, right.
It was awful for them. It was awful.
They were quite supportive, right?
Yeah, they were, but also no one fully understood. And actually, I started to really resent my family, because whenever I saw a healthy person, I was just literally like, screw you. Simple as. That's all I saw. And I remember like my sister eating a salad in my hospital room, and I was just like, get out. It's such weird things, but like, in the moment it was horrible because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so over the years, I have started to learn that family, everyone says like you don't choose your family. I get that, but we do have the choice to work on our relationships with them. And so I actively want, and still I'm wanting to spend more time with them, treat them like friends. So like, actually call them up and check in, or have those hard conversations with them, because it's very easy for that stuff not to be very honest. And, especially in our culture, we don't talk about emotions. We don't talk about hard things. We don't really talk about relationships. So it's quite lonely, but I'm trying to change that.
Okay. I mean, for such a young woman, you've got a very wise head on your shoulders.
I feel like 50 sometimes.
What do you think the biggest differences between the old Maya and the new Maya, if you like? Is there an old Maya and a new Maya?
Oh, there's so many, constant evolving versions. I'd say there's probably 2 biggest changes. One, I am emotionally fierce now. I will own the fact that I may cry in a random place, or that I may get angry and actually shout. I like that I feel deeply, and I'm not gonna suppress that anymore. Like, suppressing that led to the disease staying, even the bad emotions.
I love this.
Yeah, like I used to be a very jealous kid, very jealous. And growing up in a competitive sports environment, it was horrible. I just couldn't lose. I couldn't fathom anyone else winning but me, and I would literally resent that. But I didn't know how to express it because it's unladylike and it's not very nice.
I'm all for appropriate anger. I think anger can be too much sometimes, but I think it's very rare that you're not angry for a reason. If it's appropriate, anger is healthy.
And it's a very energetic emotion, so it has to move through us, right? Like emotions are energy in motion. If we don't feel it in some way, it's gonna just stay in us I'm pretty sure it's an emotion will stay in your body for about 7 years. And that's when the body keeps score, unless we can release it.
And then that can play out into the diseases you talked about if it's not worked on, yeah.
Everything, because then it just festers in your stomach. So yes, I'd say I'm emotionally fierce, and I love that, and I own that. And the other thing is, I guess I always used to consider I was good enough or worthy if I was achieving something, which I think is a very common thing for all of us. And I am working, and slowly I'm getting there on just being like, who cares? Like every day you wake up, you are breathing. That is it.
So you're not one, although you've got 200,000 followers, you're not one to sort of chase the metrics and the numbers too much, or is that important?
I think attaching to that is so dangerous. And honestly speaking, when I post, I then just go away. I don't have any notifications on my phone. I don't see it. I don't get that dopamine hit. To me, social media is like, can I be of value to someone? Great. Like, and if I don't enjoy posting, I won't. And my rule is, if your life offline is worse than yours online, stop posting, Maya.
So come on, what vices have you got? Most people have got addictions to something, or they got bad traits and that kind of. You said you were fake earlier, which you're not. But come on, what's the real Maya?
Oh gosh. No, I think I'm working on so much in my personality. You know, I still experience envy. Even like this week, I've been feeling really insecure about certain things, and it's not that you never experience those things. It's just that they either become a bit smaller in your life, or you have the tools to handle them. So yeah, I am a mess sometimes. I don't have my life figured out, and I make mistakes, but I am not a mistake, and I am not a failure. I am just, I guess I'm like the way I see it is like I'm a masterpiece and a work in progress all at once. You know, I'm working on myself, but I'm also damn fucking cool as well.
See, I love that. You're not afraid to give yourself compliments in a public thing and all that kind of. And I used to be like, oh, I can't do that. But no, fuck that. You've got to feel like that. I keep swearing, it doesn't matter. It's my podcast.
Yeah.
But I think that's people can learn from that kind of stuff. I think people are scared to almost like self-proclaim themselves a little bit.
Yeah, like selling yourself is difficult, right? I think, and especially as women, other women really judge that. They think it's like,
right, of course,
really arrogant and stuff. And I get it, but I don't really see it as selling myself. I see it as I'm selling an idea that can really help people. And if my story is the one to do that, or if, something like this is going to do that, cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine.
So you say you get angry, which is fine.
Yeah.
What does piss you off then?
I get angry when I get rejected. And obviously in the business world, that is everywhere. I am very good at judging my own emotions as well sometimes, so I catch myself. Sometimes I do just get angry, like, sometimes you just get those days where everything goes wrong, and that's also fine. And when I do, I actually love, this is going to sound really lame, I like shouting when a train is going by.
What? That's random. Why'd you do that?
Well, because no one can hear the scream, but I can scream as loud as I want. It is so good. And I honestly feel amazing. I just need to scream. Or I'll go into my car and I'll just scream.
Yeah.
That's it. And then I'm done.
Do you feel you've still got demons then from any or part of your life?
Yeah, of course. And hello to them. Like, I think it's that thing of like, I'm not scared of them anymore. And when they come, I welcome them. And I'm constantly healing and learning new things and, stuff like that. But yeah, these demons are there. I think it's just like, do you have the courage to face them? Yeah,
we're kind of coming towards the end. It's been fascinating. Although you come across as very confident, and you are, but you're a human being. What scares you? What do you get nervous and anxious about, or do you?
What am I scared about or anxious about? I guess in full truth, like I always have a part of me that's like, what if I get ill again? But that is a thought I cannot afford to entertain. So it comes sometimes, but I won't let it stay, because if I do, then, I'm giving it the chance to do that.
Yeah, sure.
I think like, I don't know. There's nothing I'm like truly scared of. I think I've been in situations now which have scared me.
It made you more resilient though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You touched on how women can be a little bit judgmental, but we can all be judgmental, can't we? But on the men and women thing, there's a lot of conjecture around on social media about what men do and don't do, what women do and what women don't do. And there's different communities now, but it in a headline way, what do you think men can do more of or be better at, if you like, to help and support women? And also that question in reverse, women to men?
It's a great question. So, and I don't know if I'll answer this necessarily in the right way. I do genuinely believe that men, just the way they are physically built and etc., are probably better at certain things, right? And women, the same. The thing I've been really like discovering at the moment is my masculine and feminine energy. I really like playing with that. So when I'm doing an event, I go very masculine. On stage, I am like super assertive. I like don't show too much empathy, things like that. And it works for me because I don't know, it's an energy I love bringing. But then I also, for a very long time, was not connected to my feminine at all. And it was only recently in like a relationship and, some people I'd met where they were like, Maya, like you're allowed to also be taken care of. I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But actually, connecting with my feminine has been so powerful because actually I have felt more myself where it's helped me balance that. And I think every single person, man and woman, you have equal amounts of masculine and feminine.
Absolutely.
But some people are going to be like 90% masculine, and that's why they won't really, be that emotional or have that empathy that, other people might have. But it's all about playing with those energies and understanding you can be strong with both. And something I realize is when I'm super masculine, it brings out a masculine side of men that clashes with me. Whereas when I show my femininity, they feel safe enough to show their femininity. And I love it. It's great.
But I think that's really important in a relationship. It's almost like allowing the person to be masculine or feminine. It doesn't mean that you have to adapt. It's just that it's okay. And for a man to have feminine energy can actually be quite a strong thing as well.
Oh my gosh, so strong.
Just whether it's masculine or feminine, it doesn't matter. I think that for a man to utilize his feminine energy can work wonders in many aspects, and the same for a woman. So I think you've articulated that really well, actually.
Yeah, and if anyone is interested in that, there's a great book by Sadhguru called Inner Engineering, and he talks about this because embracing your femininity doesn't mean you become more like a woman. It's not about that. It's just about connecting to a part of you that probably you have suppressed. And it's super important to get there. And so, when it comes to how men and women can support each other, I think it's about understanding that dynamic relationship you have with yourself, and those energies is then how you can bring that forward. That's
a really good answer. So then, last few questions. What's the future look like for you? What's your plans for the future?
World domination. So yeah, my big thing is to, build the Nike of mental fitness. And I see myself very much on stages that are bigger, better, engaging more people, building a really strong community here. And honestly, my future also looks like everything I'm doing now. Just enjoying my life, going on nice walks, keeping my health always at the forefront of everything I do. Like, I will never sacrifice it again. Even if it means stopping the business or whatever, I do not care.
Yeah.
I will never sacrifice my health. So that is my future. Healthy, healed, and having a hell of a lot of fun.
So what's fun to you then?
I do love playing. I think, honestly, like I find joy in the tiniest of things. Joy is like a bit of like a GPS for me. If I'm like with someone and I feel a bit of joy, cool, I'm going to stay there a bit longer. Or I get so much joy from like the sunset or just like going on a run. It's such simple things. And I love making the little ordinary things feel extraordinary to me. So by having fun, I play, I will swim, I will do whatever. Like it's every day it's a bit different. This in itself is an adventure for me.
Yeah, meeting you in person, I can feel your energy, and I hope as many people get to meet you in person as possible. I can see why you're doing what you're doing. It's really infectious. I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. Just before you do go, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs out there trying to make something of themselves?
Oh gosh, there's so much to say. I'd say the one thing I would say, and I think this probably aligns very well with the whole podcast and the theme, is just ask yourself why. Just why is it that you want to do that? Because when you can connect to that bigger part of you, that bigger purpose, or the thing that's just above your ego, right? Like, seriously think, like, what do I want? Why do I want it? And how do I want to feel? And yeah, I will say visualize that, because it's like you said, if you cannot see it, how are you going to make it happen? And that's a really fun process. And so don't do that mistake that most people do. They get to 50 and then you ask them, what do you want? And they're like, I spent my life not doing what I wanted. Yeah. Ask it now. What do you want? Like, why and how do you want to feel? And then wire that in your brain from now.
Because there's nothing that can't be achieved. There's nothing's off limits in that situation. I think some people think, oh, I just want to get promoted. I just want to do that. It's almost like having a perception of it limitless, right?
Yeah. Think big, then go bigger. Like, simple as. And even if you don't get there, you're probably going to get further than if you went for something smaller.
And where can people find you if they wanted to make contact?
So on Instagram, I'm maya.mentalfitness, and then also host Mental Fitness Live every month. And you can find all the info. And then on LinkedIn as well, which is just Maya Raichoora.
Maya, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. No, it's been a great convo.